All right, here we are with RexPaint. Welcome to another Cogmind stream, but in this one we don't actually play Cogmind. We're just going to make Cogmind more playable. This is, I have never actually streamed RexPaint before, which is kind of interesting since I've done quite a bit of streaming over the past 5 years or so, I guess. And this is my main tool for building Cogmind beyond the other usual text editors and all the other stuff, and of course the ID and working with source code and whatnot. But all the visual stuff, especially all of the UI stuff, is done in RexPaint. And so we're going to get to look at this tool a little bit and then actually design a new interface today, which we'll be getting into in a bit. Zylan, hey Zylan, welcome. Zylan says I've never actually seen RexPaint before. You haven't? Oh well, RexPaint it comes in a lot of different forms too. I mean, you can load different fonts and sizes in it. This happens to be what I'm using right now is the default font that Cogmind was designed with. So my main GU, I have multiple copies of RexPaint, and actually a funny thing is some of them are even in different versions. This is an older version. This isn't even the newest version of RexPaint because I didn't need the newer features. I update RexPaint, but the newer features are usually to resolve feature requests from other developers and artists who use it. A lot of people use RexPaint. So many people now. It's pretty awesome to see all the cool things that have been created with RexPaint over the years. Even some big games out there, big developers have used RexPaint, which is pretty awesome. So, yeah, it's just a tool that I developed for myself when I didn't find anything else that really met the needs that I had. So I spent a couple weeks just developing this basic tool, and I've been adding features to it over all these years. It's really old now. I mean, it's been out for almost as old as Cogmind. It's getting close to actually it is. It's a little older than Cogmind. That's right, because I did it before that. So it's about a decade old now, and it's gotten a lot of versions over the years. And there's still many big plans for it. I'm gonna do a RexPaint 2.0 with some awesome new features. But anyway, it's cool. It's got a lot of stuff features we can do. This is 1 second here. Let's see. Thank you, Luigi. A whole year. Oh my gosh, that's surprising. Thanks for the sub. Hey Runia, welcome. Yeah, curious to see my RexPaint process. Yeah, well, we'll get part of the process. I mean, the thing is, like I was saying, I have a lot of different versions of RexPaint, and I use them for different things. This particular version is for UI development. I have a version for prefabs. I have another version for art. So we're not doing the art. I was going to do an art stream actually first. I wasn't planning on doing this. I was going to do a RexPaint art stream, but it turns out that this opportunity presented itself earlier because I need to do this UI for the next release, and it seems like a good isolated thing to do and complete. We'll do an art stream probably some other day. This is going to be a UI stream. UI is also art, right? But it's also we're going to have to do a lot of other design considerations in there. Um, so legendary prefab stream. Yeah, I don't think we'll be doing prefabs, but I mean, I could go over it. It'd be kind of interesting to do. We'll see when the opportunity presents itself. Because like in the past, I never did dev streaming in the past at all. I always just did it on my blog, and like to share things via my blog. So anyway, so here, this is RexPaint. Here's the normal UI here. What I've done is, this is my normal size that I work in, but I've blown it up on OBS to be larger, or at least to fill the screen. Otherwise, it would be even smaller. The normal screen size would be quite small. Let me see, let me see if I can show that here. Close that. There. That's the size I'm actually working in on my screen here. But here, I'm going to blow it up for you guys. And then once we start actually designing stuff, I'm going to blow it up even more so you can see the actual content. We're going to get it bigger. But for now, I'm going to be showing the interface a little further out because we're going to be looking at some different stuff. So this is the interface on the left. I'm not really going to go into the details and all that. So this isn't a RexPaint intro stream, but you can see here you can change your fonts and select your characters. You have palettes. You can select different palettes and all your general tools. The thing is, there's a lot more features in RexPaint than you see here. This is just the super basic features that you really need that you can interact with using the mouse. But there's a ton of hotkeys that give you access to all kinds of other features that are listed in the manual, and it gets pretty complex. The RexPaint 2.0 will kind of expose more of those features by adding more menus, and you'll actually be able to move these menus and do other stuff like that. And we have layers and stuff. We can hide this layer. I put an extra layer of description on top of the main layer there. Layers is really important. And there's unlimited levels of undo and redo, which to me are one of the pretty much the most important feature in any kind of editor, because you really need to be able to undo and redo things. It helps a lot with the creativity. You can just feel free to experiment, and anything goes wrong, okay, goodbye. It's a really useful tool. So, if you look here under Browse, this is all the images I have loaded in this particular copy of RexPaint here, my GUI copy. I deleted a couple of these actually before the stream, or I put them somewhere else because they would reveal a little too much about things that aren't in the game. And I don't want people talking about that, so I deleted that. So we can look at any of these other things more freely, though. So, like, here's the main GUI, the very first one I ever made when I was developing um, the original version of Cogmind. Well, the original commercial version many years ago. This is the original file, and as you can see, it's got a lot of new windows in it. This is where all the main UI windows are thrown in, and they're all in different layers, so we can get rid of those layers. This is the original base window here where I designed these things. The general main UI, which is actually designed in a 4:3 format. The aspect ratio, Cogmind is not meant to be widescreen. It actually works on 4:3. Um, so that's why, yeah, it's shaped like this. I didn't want to require anything higher. And so anyway, yeah, other additional layers add on more data. Was just where I designed the little windows that you kind of pop up on the main interface. And there's a whole bunch of them. Yeah, youngster noticed that. There's the virus right here. That is one feature that was never actually added, but I considered it. And it's got a little tag there. But no. You all right? So youngster saying corrupted parts have been there since the beginning. They actually haven't. I have updated this. I keep this updated because this is my reference. For example, when I want to look at how different things might interact with each other, this is kind of an example of all the different things that can appear. As you can see, there's Riff on here. Riff was actually not designed into the very first versions of the game. There's all different kinds of indicators on here, so I can compare them all and see what will fit. Because if you have a UI that can show all kinds of little indicators, you got to consider the situation. What happens if two of these are visible at once? Is that possible? Are we going to allow it? How does it look? That kind of thing. So this is my reference sheet, and I do come back and edit it. Like for corrupted parts, I came back and edited it again. So there's a lot of stuff here, um, all kinds of stuff. Anyway, world's most cursed screenshot, MRU, yeah, huh, right, virus. Oh, because of the virus. So anyway, yeah. Oh, you notice Big Mind. Yeah, we'll go look at some of the other pages now. So this is the main GUI, the original one, and here's a bunch of others. These are all. So what I do oftentimes, if I want to make a bigger addition, like for the shop, the Cog shop for the event we did. Actually, this also has the other shop too. I just make a copy of GUI and then sometimes delete a bunch of stuff, and sometimes, so you can see there's extra. These other windows are still here on the side, but all I was really working with is the center here. This here is the RPG-like interface. Actually, we need to have that bigger. Yeah, okay, it's good, guys. So yeah, here you can see, like for example, for RPG, like I came in here and made notes and was here's a second layer of notes. And sometimes multiple layers can have different states. Like you reach a new level, added a little window for that. But this is where I kind of mocked up the whole UI for RPG-like mode. Um, that's what it looked like before I implemented it. And the cool thing about RexPaint is, it's a terminal window just like Cogmind. So what I draw in here, it can appear exactly like this in game. Exactly like this. Even the color palette is, these palette colors match the colors used by the game. So these are one for one matching, and I can easily say, like, I can select this color here and I see which color that is. That's green 3 in the game. So I can actually know that what these colors are and match the exact colors, so it looks exactly like it will. And so it's really nice when you can do a mock-up that looks like that, because oftentimes video game mock-ups will you need to mock up your interfaces and the way your game's going to look, but it won't look the exact same in the game, or it can be hard to get a one-for-one replication going there. But in this case, we can. So you can see exactly how it's going to work too, which is really important. So anyway, there's a bunch of others in your player to player 2 interface, the pay to buy interface. These are all the basic GUI stuff. This was for the inventory swapping. You can see how that was going to work. The menu that appears to the left of the parts list, and swapping in reverse, where you can go from an inventory list, and how that looks. It looks exactly like this when you try it in game. Filter. Oh yeah, this was the original filters I was considering for the search feature, and I eventually gave up on that because there was a much better approach with the actual search string here and all that stuff. And this is the feature that is now in beta 11, which everyone's going to get to play with soon next month. When it comes out. But this is where I was doing the mockups for that. This was the original ideas, and it turned out this was going to be much more flexible and also cooler. Um, so yeah, the combat log, the cursed combat log, right? The audio log design here. The ARG. Oh, the ARG I think has some funny one in here. Oh, look down here at the bottom left. Oh, I hid this earlier. The original ARG concept was actually going to be that you could find clues, and there was actually going to be an interface in the bottom left corner, um, and there would actually be a special interface showing more about your progress on a given floor and whatnot. And see, clue acquired, and all this flashing window appears when clue obtained, with the clue shown in the message log up there. But it turns out I got rid of this whole, I didn't use this interface at all and went straight for the message log approach, primarily because it turned out that was a really big ARG, a huge project, and it was really already a lot of work. And so trying to do this UI at the same time was gonna be unnecessary. I redesigned the ARG several times before it really got underway, and this was part of the idea that I had for it. Can I actually run this with a serial terminal? It's a bad idea, but it's funny. You mean with an actual terminal? But no, no, you can't. I mean, you can't run the program with it. It's actually it's an emulator of its own. At least 564 colors confirmed. No, no, no. It doesn't use all these colors. It's possible it can, but Cogmind doesn't actually use them all. I showed a palette on the Discord the other day, which shows the colors that Cogmind actually uses. I don't use all these, but it's possible. Obviously, there's support for any number. Here's the riff interface for riff abilities. What else do we have here? Oh yeah, here's a couple of the other basic ones. See, the original one I was talking about, the GUI window here. That actually goes along with these, like the info window. This is using actually their internal source names. It's called C info for console. So there's a lot of layers here as well, but you can see here's the item data and your status window. These are really important too because I not only do I get to see the mock-up for how this window will work in the game, but I also can make sure that all the data will fit without having to run the game or anything, and actually fit it into the design because I didn't want any scrolling for these windows. So all the information has to fit in the window itself. Even recently, I revisited this just a few days ago because I added something new to the status window this past week. And here's the data for a robot, which eventually did get access to additional information via the buttons. And then, oh, actually, that's right. Here you go. The analyses. That's what was added. You can see it right here. Analyses. We got a new button for that. There's room for it. There was room. This is already the max limit, so we still technically have a little bit of room to play with in the status window. But now there's going to be an analyses button. Finally, everyone can access their full list of analyses and the details for those things in the via the status window. So that's what I was visiting it for. And there's also the machine hacking. No, this is not machine hacking. This is regular machines. When you look at the info, hacking is a whole separate thing down here. Hack terminal. Here we go. There's a bunch of hacking stuff, including, again, multiple layers depending. Like you have this layer here, different kinds of appearances, and all kinds of notes in there. So yeah, here's a whole bunch of other windows. If there's any of these in particular curious about, we can look at. We might end up looking at one or two of these in a little bit anyway. There's also some non-game stuff in here. This was from Grids Age Games tests. There's what is it? Graph system, which I didn't actually include in the game. I think I've talked about this a long time ago, years ago. But yeah, I was gonna additionally. I was thinking about having score your not only your score history, but also graphs showing how you performed through the game. Kind of basically what Leavoya has been doing with Data Miner, which is awesome. And only obviously it's much better because if you can handle that stuff on the web. I mean, it's neat to have in game and all, but it's you can do a much better job of it on the web. Um, so where's the intro? Luigi's asking where the intro is. That wouldn't be in this version because the intro uses wide characters, and so I use a different version of REXPaint for that. I have that in a separate version, but it's in there. This is all the UI elements that use the standard text layout, and the intro does not. Here's the difficulty selection menu, other stuff. Mockups for alternative appearance of the difficulty selection menu. I ended up going with this one, the horizontal style and these colors and whatnot. This here is Windows sub-window breakdown. I was breaking down the windows specifically for coding purposes, so that I could have a clearer idea of how it was being inserted into the actual game when I was working on it. Because I think behavior changed. I forget why I did that. I normally don't do that, but in this case I needed to. What else is there in here? Website buttons, robot hacking. Anyway, yeah. So there's more stuff down here too. Mockups for Big Mind. That's right. Was appearing? I was invisible. This is Polybot. It was originally codenamed Big Mind. This was the Polybot interface mockup number 1, the original mockup, where I was trying to figure out how to do Cogmind in a different size format and how that would change the game. There's a bunch of different mockups here for Polybot, and it eventually turned into the final mockup right here. That's the final one that the game was designed on. But yeah, a lot of different ways. You can see, like here, I was considering working on the actual stats having bars that go up and down, but in order to give more room for the left side. But I eventually realized we didn't need to necessarily have these categories, and this is also really esoteric and hard to understand. So ended up eventually going on the top side, even though this is still esoteric, but it's at least a lot easier to read, and you can get the numbers in there too. And anyway, it eventually worked out okay. So Big Mind, yes, and other game menu stuff, the achievements, all that. All right, so I don't want to spend forever going over things in the past. Score history. That's something that hasn't actually been added to the game yet. Here, I just took a copy clearly of the other window and then cleared out a space and threw this in here. But it's nice being able to do that. All right, so MTNC manifest and dialogue labels. This was one of the original ones I did too. This was, along with GUI, this was one of the first pages I ever wrote for Cogmind UI design, showing how labels would appear for different things, designing what the labels would look like for exit labels, off-screen, on-screen, dynamic labels of various kinds. Obviously, not all of these were used. This was testing some different possibilities. So you can see some of the stuff that never actually ended up in the game here. Okay, so I think we covered pretty much everything about that. We're gonna get started with an actual new UI design here. Let me see. So all right. So what are we actually building today? Let me show you. We're not going to build the actual UI on the source code, but we're going to be working on designing the layout for it. And once that's like half the battle. Once the layout's ready, I can easily just implement that in the game. It shouldn't be too hard. And we'll talk about this as I get to each feature. But each part of it. 1 second here. All right. So here are my notes for this particular window. For beta 11, add a new menu for accessing all Shift-Alt commands via a sequence of keys starting with spacebar. So basically, right now we have a lot of commands in Cogmind which are Shift-Alt-Letter. Now, there's a problem with that, and that is, first of all, some people don't like using that many keys on the keyboard at once to access something. And also it involves the Alt key. Which for some people is problematic for 2 reasons. One is Linux users actually have a problem with the Alt key because it can be also used as more likely as a system key because it doesn't have a dedicated key like a Windows key. So that can interfere with some of the commands sometimes for some users, and some people can get around that or know how to. But either way, it's a problem. Some people just don't want to or don't like to use it, and it's also harder for discoverability. You have all these special commands that have Shift, Alt, and Letter, and they're basically special commands which are pretty rare and they're pretty hidden. And it'd be nice to have, with a good UI will have a way to more easily discover these commands, and then also access them fairly easily. So what I want to do is make all these commands available via spacebar. Right now, the spacebar does have actually a function in Cogmind. It recalls the last interface message, the messages that appear up here at the top of the map for interface related things like warnings, like you can't do this, blah blah blah, or there's not really a whole strong reason to recall those messages. That's the feature that literally was from all the way back from the original XCOM, I think. Um, and I just kept it there. And spacebar is a really big, useful key, and we just never used it for anything. And so it seems really cool. I think that it's still left there as a possibility to use for basically a way to access all these special commands. So from now on, for example, I'm gonna leave. We're gonna still have the Shift Alt, but for example, if you want to go naked, you don't have to use Shift Alt P. You can press Spacebar and then just P. That's the point. That's the goal for this. Give it a few years and we'll be able to play Cogmind with one of the Mech Warrior arcade pods. Oh man, I remember the days of the Mech Warrior arcade pods. I mean, I guess they probably still have that stuff in places now, but I mean, I was playing that stuff over 20 years ago, the original ones. It's fun stuff. All right. So this is in the source code here. In the commands list, and I keep a convenient list of all the keys that I've used. This is a different format than will appear in the manual, for example, because in the manual, when you show a user the keys for the game, you need to show them in a more categorical manner. Uh, you don't really want to show them. I actually did have a list like this in the original manual. It wasn't didn't people didn't find it especially useful. It's useful for me to know, for example, in an alphabetical order, A through Z, which keys have I used, which have I not, and what are they for. And these have gradually filled up over time. So we've literally used pretty much every key and key combination on the keyboard. Here's an exception. I have not used a lot of number keys. I've been leaving those. Not sure if or when we will do that. But, and actually, technically, 0 was, actually, no, it was 9. These are used, this is 9 ended up being used only for special modes. Special events, basically, special modes, same thing. But not using F13 to F24. Yeah, Luigi, I didn't really know those existed in on real keyboards until not long ago when Luigi was talking about it. He's, he was getting a key. He was actually getting an F13 out of pressing his print screen button or whatever the button was after F12, which is funny because Cogmind doesn't actually know what F13 is. But anyway, it only goes up to F12. Reasonable keyboards. The number of applications that actually do stuff when you press F14 is surprisingly large, says Lorenz. Interesting. But yeah, so on some on some keyboards, technically, Cogmind can apparently get a F13 message, and it's equivalent to print screen, which is interesting. I mean, it's technically in that location. And so that's what had happened to Luigi. He pressed his print screen button, or he pressed F. He got F13, and it made a print screen sound, and he didn't recognize the sound at first, but he recorded it, and we were trying to figure out what that was, and it was pretty funny. It turns out that yeah, it actually is the print screen button, which is generally after F12, but which is pretty funny. Yeah, he says F13 was mapped to print screen. Yeah, it's pretty funny. SDLs. I do know that SDL does support higher level function keys. I don't know what you don't even need a patch for that, Luigi. It's just standard in SDL. Um, to my knowledge, the SDL key sims go all the way up to, yeah, I know it goes all the way up to 24. I saw them in the actual list back when I was working with that, and I thought that was interesting. But yeah, obviously I didn't. I'm not going to rely on that myself. But oh, a patch for your silly Mac. I see. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, so yeah, so here's the alpha keys, numeric keys, and all the other special keys and stuff. This is the one we're working with, this list here. So Shift Alt combinations. This is for all the special stuff, which, as you can see, is stuff that's pretty rarely used, but can be useful for sure. Especially some of these are really useful. This one's like used a lot, like their Shift Alt P, go naked here. It's not helpful. Anyway, so yeah, what we're going to do is take this list and turn it into a new interface, which I wrote the other notes down here. We can go over that real quick. Recall, I wrote these notes not recently. This was a long time ago. I planned on actually adding this feature for years, but I've waited to do it intentionally because I was waiting for that list to fill up. I want to make sure we're pretty much done here. Apparently, we haven't used Q yet and E, but I wanted to wait until we had a pretty full list or so that we could uh, not have to redesign the UI later, because you don't want to, when you design a UI, you want to be able to take into account all the variables and what it's going to need to do. And I wouldn't really want to expand it. That it can become an issue if you do stuff too early. And it wasn't super important anyway. I mean, it's helpful, but it's not necessary, because technically you can do all these actions with the Shift Alt, and they are rarer. So anyway, I did make a list here what commands we have. This because we're not going to need all these commands. Like, we don't need these commands in our special commands menu. VI key moves. Obviously, we don't need that. But we do need all the other stuff. So I'm going to need to make a shorter excerpt of that. So anyway, the same mouse's concepts will need to be mouse accessible. So we're going to need these to be buttons as well, mouse buttons. Now the menu itself though might still only be opened by spacebar. I haven't decided yet if on the main UI do we want another button. You can actually just do this 100% with mouse. Like, for example, on the main UI here, we have in the bottom right corner, um, the map button, for example. Down here, you can click on map and get the world map to come up, right? So you don't need to use the keyboard at all if you want to access the world map. But what about the special commands menu? Should we force the user to use spacebar? I mean, it's a big key. You don't need it very often. So I think we're probably going to be okay with not having a button on the main screen for this. The drawback to that is it lowers discoverability a bit, because, again, discoverability is pretty important. You want people to be able to just click on stuff and find it accidentally, even if they're not taught that, or even if they don't read the tutorial message, because there's definitely going to be a tutorial message about this. It's going to tell you, press spacebar to open up, special actions, et cetera, et cetera. It won't do that at the very early in the game. It'll tell you this kind of thing later on, because these aren't going to be actions you use frequently. But it'll eventually be a part of the tutorial that people will see. But people miss those things. So you also want to be people to be able to find it other ways. There's also a tutorial telling you how to open the world map, and even people who've even played for a while, still don't realize there's a world map. It just happens. But there's also a button here to click on. I wonder how many people actually use the button to access it. But it also works with F9 and backspace. There's two different keys for that. But anyway, so I don't know if we're going to need we might have another button down here, maybe, for it if we think it's necessary. Otherwise, spacebar might be enough. Hey, Danny, expert. Control C should instantly close the game. Shift Alt Q should be hibernate, says Luigi. Right. Will most special commands occur? Wait, there's buttons down. Luigi, are you just noticing the buttons down there? I mean, these buttons aren't important if you're a keyboard user anyway. No, there. But yeah, there's escape help button, and there's also the map button, and there's also a tutorial message that tells you about this map button and the other keys for it. But it's interesting, some people just don't know those are world map. Marlon, were you asking when? What do you mean? When will special commands occur? We're listing the situations here where they will, which are considered special commands. All the Shift Alt keys, and spacebar will open this menu. We're going to start working on the thing shortly. We're still going over background and REXPaint stuff, but let's make sure we have an actual complete list here. The commands that are a bit esoteric, exactly. And these are the esoteric commands. So, like, show auto pairs. All right. Actually, I think that has to be held, doesn't it? The show auto pairs actually needs to be held, which is a problem. Same with orders. Like, we have show orders, Shift Alt O. If you hold Shift Alt O down, it literally highlights all the orders on the map. All the orders, meaning orders that have been given to your allies. It shows who they're guarding. It shows where they're moving. It shows all this stuff. I don't think a lot of people use that. And I also don't think I'm not sure we can actually put that into this menu, period, because it's not a key. This won't be the kind of menu you can really hold unless we make it, for example, like you press spacebar and then hold the O key down, which something tells me that it's probably not going to work. In fact, I'm pretty sure it won't work the way I know it won't work the way it's implemented. But that's also a pretty complex thing to do in the UI, to hand over control of that key being held to another window, and it's overall going to be pretty annoying. But the other thing about the Alt key I was going to bring up earlier, in terms of Shift Alt, is that there's also the problem with the Alt key in general in Cogmind and some other software, basically because of how Windows handles it, is that sometimes when you Alt tab back and forth between Cogmind and other windows, the Alt key gets stuck, and you got to kind of tap it before it works again. So sometimes Alt keys can seem like it's not working the first time you do it. It only works the second time if you've been swapping between windows right before you do it, which is kind of annoying and complicated as well. So it's nice to avoid the Alt key when you can. Um, Sleepy Anton, welcome, Sleepy Anton. Says, can you add logging to something like the click map button and see how some of the results for play sessions, see how often it gets used? Oh, yeah, we can totally do that. I have actually, I mean, I have done that for some commands. We have logging or in the score sheet, directly in the score sheet, we have data, for example, for some of the user interface choices. One of the main ones is movement. Like I've shown this before, is how do people like to move their Cogmind? Do you use the mouse? Do you use the arrow keys, VI keys, or the numpad? Because there's a lot of different ways to move, right? And it's always really interesting to see the layout for that. Actually, um, let me pull that up. 1 second here. What? Oh, wait a minute. 1 second. We'll search. Here we go. There we go. There's a window for you. Move some other windows on my other screen here. All right. So here's an example of, this is older data. I might have some more recent, but I'm not sure. But yeah, this is in the score sheet data itself, where we can see how many people are using different movement methods. This number has actually gone down over the years. It used to be around 10% when it was Cogmind was even more dominated by the hardcore players, but now general Steam community joined, and more different players have started to join. And obviously the mouse numpad was always high, but numpad competes with mouse. There's quite a few people using numpad. As you know, I'm in this category here. Arrows. A lot of people use arrows though, especially people on some laptops, right? And so one other interesting thing I was thinking about, I was considering it for the next release. I don't think I will probably, but hey, I'm going to see how feasible it will be. I might split up arrows into people who are only using 4-direction arrows and people who are using all 8 directions. Because arrows is actually capable of 8-directional movement through modifier keys. But I don't know how many people using arrows are actually using the modifier keys, and I think that would be really interesting to know. But anyway, this is an example of how we can indeed put this data into score sheets. But I don't really want to bloat the score sheet data with all the user interface options, which is why I haven't gone really overboard on it. There's a few other options in there. They're like we know whether someone's using a tactical HUD mode. But indeed, yes, we could detect that information if we wanted to. The number of people who are actually pressing this button down there, which would be interesting. Oh, you noticed that before, Decan saying when trying to enter Alt F10 to restart, you're probably talking about the fact that the Alt key didn't take maybe. But yeah, can't believe Vim is the least popular. That's actually a lot of people, to be honest. The actual raw number is pretty decent on it. I think it was even more impressive back when it was at 10%, but still 5% is quite a lot of people. Aquafungulistic, HJKL gang. There you go. Anyway, yeah, it's an interesting control scheme. I've played with it a bit before when I played the original Rogue, because Rogue only supports the original one only supports HTKL, so VI keys, and so I had to learn it to be able to play that. Not that I got really good at it, but yeah. But it is, yeah, exactly. Like Luigi said, it's great for a laptop without a numpad. The thing about me is I always buy laptops with numpads, so it's not super helpful in that regard. But yeah, if I had a laptop without a numpad, I would definitely learn it for sure. Learn, like, actually get good with it. I like the fact that you don't have to move your fingers over to the numpad. It can make things a lot faster. Down with a numpad or with Toxie. I don't know. I've been a fan of numpad since way before I even played roguelikes. All the way back with when I used to play a lot of simulation games, and I loved remapping everything so that my hand could always have one hand on the numpad, like all the numpad keys, and get pretty much almost all the functionality out of that, out of the numpad. I remember I used to play on MechWarrior, all the earlier MechWarrior games, Sims, a lot like that too, with only the numpad. on one hand. I'd move the whole keyboard all the way to the left, and you put my left hand on the numpad, and my right hand on mouse, and all the commands were right there. Pretty convenient. But yeah, numpad rules. I had to use HTML playing tone because no numpad, but I wouldn't opt into it. Oh, youngster, you use Vim, really? Oh, even though you have a numpad because it's so boss. All right, I didn't expect that you're using VI keys. All right, so back to what we're actually working on here. So what we need to do first is decide exactly what commands need to be in here. So I think for now we're going to ignore show auto pairs. That's super rare. I don't even know if anyone even does anyone in chat use this feature, or I mean, we could also ask how many people even know what that means or have a need for it, period. It's one of those things that it's not really necessary to pretty much ever do. But it was just a feature I added because it could be added. So yeah, Luigi, and most people don't even understand the feature, for sure. I think it would. Some people might be more likely to use it if they understood it, but it's not useful really. What it does is it just shows. I mean, heck, I might even remove it. But the problem is, you add this one feature that almost no one uses, but then there's like 10 people who use it and love it, and they really hate when you remove stuff, and that makes me sad. It's right here. You can barely see it because of all the other windows. Close some of these. But on the same level, it's for swapping. Remember when you have these little ticks next to a part because you swapped it with another part? Well, technically, you can press Shift Alt A and it shows you all the parts at simultaneously. I have a demo of that. 10 people is a solid 1% of the community. Hey, no, it's not. The active community, maybe closer. Definitely closer. Let me see here. Let me see if I have a demo. Auto pair, auto pair option demo. Here we go. I have a demo of this. In a second. Demo. All right. See all these ticks? It's for when you're. This is the demo where I'm repeatedly swapping from inventory. There we go. Shift Alt A. See that? Shift Alt A. It showed a Shift Alt A where it shows what all the ticks are to the left of the tick. But right. The way that what you normally do is individual swapping, and you can easily do that with the Y key down there. See, there it goes again. Shift Alt A. So there's a demo of that feature. That's what the auto pairs does. I think almost no one knows about it, and even most people don't even understand it. Period. So it's not the kind of thing we really need in the list. And this could even be a key for potentially reclaiming. We might reclaim this key later. So we don't need that. I'm going to start making a different list here. VI keys. We're going to get rid of all the VI keys. I don't like using I don't want to use my notes list here because it's bright white, and that's just or it's gray technically if it's bright. We'll get back to the notes, but I'm going to probably go from this list here. All right. If you don't need VI keys, this key is unused for now. We'll get to you. VI key move. So log notes are definitely something we would need on the special commands menu. Toggle the ruler overlay. That's a very good candidate. It's nice to have something. Swap all auto pairs. So see, this is the one that goes with this. Shift Alt A shows the auto pairs. This swaps them all. You can swap all of those at once. It was kind of meant as a way that I don't know. As a way you could swap like 2 or 3 parts that you keep swapping back and forth. But the thing is, it's not super feasible because as long as there's any other part you swapped that you don't want to be part of that group, you're not going to be able to swap it. It's going to swap everything, even the stuff you don't want to swap. So. And yeah, exactly, youngster. There is no time advantage for swapping them. It was mainly an attempt at a sort of QOL for item sets, but Cogmind is not really compatible with that sort of thing. It was discussed a lot in previous years. Some players were hoping for some kind of way to define builds, build some kind of kit thing that you could get, but it's too complicated. There's too many different parts that are going in and out for different reasons, and you lose parts and you gain parts, and it's too complicated. I don't think it can actually work. So anyway, swap all auto pairs. I might even remove this feature entirely from the game. The Shift Alt W and A. I just thought it was fun as an attempt to use, but I wonder. I don't think anyone actually uses that because we already have the much better option of individually remembering which parts you use right here under the Y option. When you select large battery, it shows you that the swap target that you had earlier was Y, the improved targeted computer. So you can easily go back and forth between two parts in a single slot. That's generally going to be more useful. Um, so I don't think in the end we're going to need this. Anyway, we definitely want this. All right, wait. Oh yeah. This was going to be in our menu, but I removed it from the game. This was both added and removed during the beta 11 development. It still exists in wizard mode, but we don't need special commands in this menu for wizard mode. But so technically, this key is used. Um, we can reclaim it though if I need it later as an extra key option because um, wizard mode could use a different method to do that via the debug command or the debug window. So anyway, we might be able to reclaim that later. It's not something we need now anyway. Tagging items. All right, finally we have another option we actually need in this menu. Tagging items. You can tag items. This is something that's useful, but a lot of people don't even know it exists or how to do it. This was actually a common question. How do you tag an item? Because people know now. I mean, some people we've seen new players who know you can tag items. They've seen other players with tagged items. It's where you add an item, add in braces, some other custom text so that you can, after the item name, so you can remember what it is, usually for artifacts and stuff, but you can really tag anything you want for any purpose. But anyway, so that's a good one, a really good one for this menu. We've got stat dump, that's another good one. We're going to need stat dumps. Reswap. I guess we'll leave that in there because, see, part of the purpose behind this menu is also to teach the commands. We're going to have a little note at the bottom of this window that says you can access any of these commands via Shift Alt as well. Shift Alt and the letter if you don't want to use the spacebar, that kind of thing. And so this is also a way to teach the commands. It's kind of like the help menu, which doesn't have all the commands in it. We have the in-game commands list, but the commands list technically does not include quite everything. Here is the main commands list as I designed it in REXPaint. This is actually missing a couple things for sure because I didn't update this one entirely. It goes all the way to the bottom now. And so there's some extra options over here. But this is the actual command list, and it doesn't fit everything. It doesn't fit most of the Shift-Alt commands. In fact, it probably doesn't have any Shift-Alt commands because they're special. Well, it does have show orders here. Shift-Alt-O, hold. But anyway, this is how you learn the commands, but it can't fit everything. The rest of them are in the manual. All the full command list is in the manual. Mainly, it's only got a few things that aren't found in these pages. But this would be an example of an easier way to teach people the Shift Alt commands because it will be on this menu. So for reswap, for example, I don't think people will probably want to be doing a lot of reswap on this menu, but we are going to want it on the menu anyway to teach. Now, does anyone? Hey, we got UI stream. Yeah, we're getting into the UI here. So Shift Alt R. I wonder how many people. I know people actually use this because I did remove this earlier. I removed it a couple years ago, and I immediately got complaints from people who are using it. Reswap, what that does is if you've just done a part swap, you can immediately swap it back, the exact same thing, and just for whatever reason, it's sometimes useful. Some people want to do that, so. Because as I read the help menu about 10 times that I was blind. Okay. Yeah, Wimika says it took me way too long to figure out how people tagged items. Yeah, exactly. I was just talking about that. Is that this will be a way to teach people how to do that and make it a lot more accessible and easier. So yeah, this is one of the most common questions we've gotten with regard to special commands is how do you tag items? So this will solve that problem pretty much. All right, so we're going to keep reswap in the menu. Go naked is another one, which is a lot of people use this for sure. But this is funny because this is actually one of the ones most people know, Shift Alt P to do this. Okay, so show orders. I think we're going to have to end up removing that because it's not going to be in the menu itself simply because it's not really compatible. I'm not sure what to do about this one yet, actually. Let's not do that. I'm not sure about this one and this one. No, we can stay. Anyway, we're not going to design it in the menu to begin with. All right, export map image. Here's another good one. This is actually another common question ever since that's become a feature. Is how do you export? How do you get to see the entire map you've explored? You can export it as an image, a PNG in the game directory, and so you can examine the entire map. And sometimes people do that to share with mainly to share with other people, but also sometimes to get a better overview of the entire thing. Kind of maybe look for places to explore and whatnot. Riff abilities, here's another big one we're going to want in here. I missed this VI key move. All right, we've got riff abilities is definitely in here, even though this one technically has its own button on the interface. But this also at least teaches you that it's Shift-Alt-I, which the main button does not. You'd have to read the actual commands list for that in the manual. But anyway, and also, yeah, it's good to teach that because also it shows the keyboard users how to get into that. Although I think that's probably actually now that I think about it, this was also mentioned in the tutorial message. When you get Riff, it tells you how to access your abilities list, and it tells you immediately, and it's immediately accessible because you get some of the base Riff abilities right when you first get Riff. But again, people don't always read tutorial messages. That's something you definitely learn as a game dev very early on. People don't read all your tutorial messages, and not only that, but naturally people will forget some of these things and need a way to remember or recall it more easily. And so this menu will serve that purpose. Here's a feature which is relatively new, and I don't think a whole lot of people do it. I've used it a few times. It's not foolproof, unfortunately, because if you get stopped on your way to the target, you have to restart again, which can be kind of annoying. But it does work, and it can be useful if you're in keyboard mode and don't want to use your mouse, and your cursor happens to be somewhere far away and you want to go there. It works. It goes straight. It'll path you to the cursor. So we want that. Find item. Here's a really big one, which would be nice. This one's unused. Yay, we have a free key. It's nice to have free keys. This is actually for the wizard mode and debugging. This accesses a special menu. So we're not going to put that in the spacebar menu. We're going to leave that one empty. And here's another one, map comments, which is a new feature in beta 11, which will have also be on this menu. It's useful. So yeah, here we have now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 keys for this menu. Okay. I'm pretty sure our soft tone stream was blown away by that feature existing. The tagging feature. Immediately forgettable. Uh-huh, yeah. Which one were you referring to? Immediately forgettable. Okay, so, all right, so we're going to start actually building the interface now. So this is our list here. We've got 11. That's going to be important. Riff abilities. Okay. Yeah, the thing about riff abilities is I've changed it 3 times so far. It was originally Shift-Alt-R, and that was why I remember I talked about getting rid of reswap. Well, I got rid of reswap specifically because I wanted the R key back for riff, because it makes sense to use the first letter if you can, right? So I said, okay, well, I never used the reswap. I never heard of anyone using the reswap, so let's just get rid of it. I immediately got notifications from people who said they were using it and they wanted it back. So I said, okay, fine, we'll use F. So because F is better than I think in this case. When you pick a letter to reference. You can do it for a number of different reasons. Why do you pick a certain letter to refer to a certain command from a given word? And one of the reasons you generally don't want to pick a vowel unless it's the first letter of the word, and because it's a more common letter, right? And the F is more kind of emphasized and clear in that word, so you'd want to use the F, I think. So anyway, I picked F, and then after that, for beta 11, we added the find item feature, and which is item searching, and we can't use S because we have that for stat dumps, and that makes sense there. And so we're going to have to use F. I was going to call this search, the search feature, and we use S, but we couldn't do that. So I named it find specifically so I could use F. So riff again gets the short stick and got changed to I, which is the worst letter to use, but I didn't have a choice. Chap said, and here I was thinking F was for friends. No, it just came from the riff here. F is for friends. So anyway, it ended up with I. So this has literally, in the past two versions of Cogmind, changed 3 times. One of those times was during beta 11, so this will only have really been noticeable to beta 11 players, perhaps. But yeah, now it's I, and it's not very noticeable. And it's kind of hard to remember this one. I don't even remember this one, in fact, probably because I'm more also in tune with the fact that yeah, it keeps changing, and I can't keep all these things in my brain. So I guess I should say less in tune with that. But anyway, so now it's going to be on this new menu, which will make it very easy to access with the keyboard. All right, so we have 11 keys here. Yeah, count them again. Yes, 11. All right, we have 11 keys, at least 11. Eventually, right, we might have to make room for more, but 11 will be what we're going to be starting with. All right, so back to actually using REXPaint rather than just talking about the UI. Let's see, let's look at normal. All right, so what we're going to use for this is, let's go with a copy of GUI. Make a copy. Shift left click makes a copy of an image. So you can see a new GUI. It automatically appends a number, so it can increment numbers for you. If, for example, if what I made a copy of was called GUI2, it would make a file called GUI3. But it automatically gives us the chance to rename it here. So we're going to call it just special for special commands. Now we have a new copy. Here's a copy of these. Now we have 2 copies of this file here. They have different hidden states, so they look different. But they're identical files here. All right, so we probably, yeah, we're not going to need any of the upper layers. So all these layers here, LCK here is lock. You can lock a layer so that it can't be modified through various means. Because also some things that affect multiple layers, a lot of different features. So we're going to get rid of these layers. We don't need the upper layers at all. And we're also going to redo this lower layer. I'm going to right click here, select the rectangle feature, and just delete all this stuff. Goodbye. All right. Now we have a nice empty space out here. This kind of gives us an idea of, here's the UI, and I mean, here's the main UI. And so we're going to be building in here the actual special commands interface. Now this will be a modal member. Sorry, reading stuff while I'm talking here. This will be a modal menu. So for example, you press spacebar, it's going to basically just be a pop-up. This should be probably in the centered in the map, and then you will either press a single letter key or you will click on a button. So we're going to need buttons, and we're going to make these buttons consistent. You know, when you have an interface, you need things to look consistent so people have kind of an assumed way to interact with them. It becomes obvious. You don't want a game that has buttons that all the buttons look like very different from each other in different parts of the game, because it can be harder to, especially in a game like this where it's a terminal game. You really need to have some kind of consistent way the buttons appear. So let's look at some of our other buttons. Robot hacking. So for example, one example of buttons in Cogmind is, this is a list where you select things from, and it's pretty obvious it's a list. So this one, in this case, or you can see the buttons are here. When you have something selected, it shows brackets off to the left and right, but that's only for a list. We probably aren't going to need to worry about that, because I don't think we're going to be doing this as a list. We might. I haven't decided yet. We'll see. But one possibility with the actual button itself, is this. This is a button in Cogmind. You can see we have a lighter or darker colored brackets surrounding the main word. This is what a standard button looks like. Shows that it's interactive. You can see also see that in our, for example, terminal hacking. Get rid of some of this other junk. Terminal hacking. There's another button example right there. Same thing. And you have your letter for access off to the left with a hyphen and this. So this is in the list format. That's how it appears. All right, so what I'm going to do here is make a couple of copies. I'm going to copy that over here. We're going to copy the terminal example as well. So what we're looking for is consistency, and making sure that these things are going to look recognizable through different parts of the interface. Sometimes they'll be slightly different by necessity, but we're going to try to keep them similar. And let me see, do we have any other good examples of different buttons? All right, so that's hacking machines. That's all going to be the same. These are also clickable, but these are different. You can see, you know, actually, do I have? That's right. I hid those layers. Which layer is useful here? You can't actually label layers in REXPaint currently, which is probably going to be a feature in 2.0. It's a feature a few people have asked for, is the ability to name layers, which makes a lot of sense. And you can actually have more layers than four. Um, REXPaint supports more layers and you can actually extend the menu to take up more space here. But it actually only supports, I think, currently up to 9 layers. It's more than enough for me, that's for sure. In fact, I only use 4 layers, but some people like to have some extra layers in there. I use 4 layers in Cogmind. Obviously, in the GUI here, I can keep myself to a lower number of layers. That's fine. But even in Cogmind's prefabs and other stuff, I use 4 layers for different things. All right. So let's. Oh, the other thing I was gonna. So the thing I was gonna show in here is that, yeah, if you click on something, you can use arrow keys to actually select something in here. It's not technically a button, but also when your cursor is over it, you get the brackets appearing to the left and right of it, like you see in. Well, it was in the list menu. Actually, wait, where's the lists? I forgot what the lists are. Anyway, but yeah, I get the brackets. Oh, here's another thing I didn't actually share earlier, or we didn't look at for very long. There was the cog shop for the pay to buy uh, interface was designed here. It also includes the shop, which was kind of a mock-up for a merchant's thing, which I threw together. This is actually the colorized version. The version I shared, all of the ARG events used monochrome images to keep in their theme, and so this was actually turned into a monochrome image. But this is the original one with the original different colors available in the interface. Now, this is not actually what merchants are like. There's the Borg's assimilator. Actually, this is the name of a particular bot which isn't in the game yet. Um, one Borg. Um, but yeah, this was a kind of just a concept for a merchant shop interface. Even though this is not necessarily what it'll look like. This isn't even how merchants will work probably. But I just kind of made something up specifically for the ARG because I needed to talk about the merchants and I needed something, so I made up this little interface, mocked it up. Yet. One Borg might show up in beta 12. But yeah, that's where this came from. Anyway, so okay, back to what I was actually doing here. Uh-huh. New faction alert. All right, so let's go to. So as a pop-up window, do we have any other? We don't even have any other windows like this in Cogmind, really, do we? This will be the first one. We don't have any. We have on-map pop-up windows which refer directly to something on the map, like the orders menu, the allies. Actually, where did I throw that into the allies mock-up or what? I haven't looked at a lot of these older things for a while. And I didn't actually do anything in advance for this, so you could see it from scratch. Normally, I might have wanted to prepare, but I did not do that here. Where is the orders menu? Robot hacking counts, I guess, but I didn't put it on a map. Oh, you know what? I know where it is. I can't find it because it's here. Probably. Yeah, okay, there we go. Yeah, here's an example. You can see here the commands menu. This is kind of an example. This appears. This. Wait, I don't have an example. Oh yeah, here we go. Here's some pop-ups. This is what I was trying to compare to here. See, here's an example of, so there's commands, the commands menu, and there's also a transmission window here, which shows you how it appears on the map. 1, 2, 3. You can see different. If it's referring to a robot which is to its top left, then the label goes here or here. It shows different directions. But this is an example of an on-map pop-up. But the difference is this pop-up refers directly to something on the map. Same technically with the commands list and the parse list. So if this new kind of pop-up here that we've got coming, it sort of works a little differently because it doesn't refer to anything exactly on the map. But we'll leave it here anyway. All right, so let's see. So we got our buttons. Let me see. What is this going to want to look like? Do we want it in a list format or not? I'm going to first copy this over here. We're going to put, what is our first button called? Oh, all right. All right. While we're working on this, I'm going to go into my new, I'm going to zoom in a little further now. And we're going to move, oh shoot, I probably shouldn't have done that. That's fine, whatever. We'll just be dynamic about this. I'll pay attention to what it looks like for you guys over there as well. I had the window lined up for this in particular, but technically I guess we can close it and reopen it, be in the same spot. But all right, so now we're zoomed in a bit more. I can see a little better. I'm not zoomed in a little bit more. You know, I'm looking at this all the way zoomed out because I like working with tiny fonts, as you might assume. All right, so key command for C is what this does is map comments. Whoops. Gonna actually click on the right spot here. Map comments. And then we can copy that and move that over. And probably not gonna need all of this stuff, but so this is looking at it as a possible way to do it as a list. Oh, before I get going further here, the other thing I wanted to do, let me see. Let me get an idea of what we need on the elements here for our list. Help menu. Here we go. So this is our options menu in the game. This is the mock-up for the options menu as well. It's got some holes in it. You can see other layers showing through. There we go. Yeah, I meant for this one to be its own layer only. But as you can see down here in gray at the bottom, it's, you know, when you mouse over a different option, it shows you what that option means. It's always annoying to me in games that don't do that. When you have an option and you have no idea what it means, you can only base your knowledge on what the option name is, which isn't necessarily going to be explanatory, especially for new players. And even if it is, there's other details you might want to provide so they can make a better, more informed decision, right? So we've got this little gray text down here. So we're going to need the same, we're going to want the same thing ideally for this window as well. It'll probably go in the bottom of the window in gray, telling us more about, for example, like map comments, and or also we're going to need another piece of information, for example, Shift Alt, something like some kind of comment like this. This is not the actual wording, but I have trouble focusing on all the right words in stream. But it'll be more descriptive, like something like that at the bottom of our window. 2 lines if necessary, split into 2 lines. But this will be kind of just an explanation to let them know that they can also use Shift-Alt-Z along with any of these letters. Something like that. I'll figure out the best way to put that later. But the other thing will be a description of what it does if it's necessary for certain commands. All right. So next thing I'm going to do is move this down to here. I'm using the cut and paste tool to just move things around as necessary. That's what this is here, the rectangle, showing our dimensions there. And I'm using the keyboard, obviously, but you can technically do all the drawing commands here in REXPaint using the menu. And we're not doing any real drawing here, so I'm just typing stuff, but normally you can also select characters and whatnot, but it does boxes for you automatically. Well, not that way though. Got to actually be hollow before it'll make a box for you. Okay, so we're going to want this at the bottom somewhere. We're going to need the top of the menu here. Whoops. No, not you. Rectangle. And whoops. I have to select the color for the rectangle. Right. Oh, wait. We want this one, that color. Let me see. Yeah. So as you can see, borders in Cogmind are green 2 as their base color. Green 2 is right there. This is green, the green line, and that's color 2, 0, 1, 2. This here is green 3 is for actual brighter words, and this darker other stuff is green 1. Just allowing things to stand out as much as you need. All right, and so we would want to put this inside our box somewhere. Probably not quite at the edge. Kind of want to worry about how much extra space there is. Spacing is important, but let's see. Let's start with one of the things about this menu I was thinking about earlier is that unlike a lot of the things in Cogmind, a lot of the menus and stuff, I love doing animations. But this window shouldn't be animated. It needs to be instantaneous, or it can be animated. It can perhaps be animated when it appears, but we also want it to accept input immediately as it appears, even before the animation is complete. Because if you're using the keyboard, this menu will pop up for a split second, probably. Even if you press um, even if you press, spacebar. Oh, one second, I forgot to check. Oh, I'm slightly outside the window. I forgot to keep that visible. One second, move this over so I can actually see what you guys can see. But anyway, what you want to do is, there we go. Yeah, it needs to be very responsive, this menu. Unlike, for example, the hacking window, which I intentionally ended up designing it so that you had to wait half a second in order to actually interface with it. But this one is going to be accept input immediately, so you can immediately do, like, for example, spacebar. Where are we going? Spacebar C, and you can immediately get the commands. In fact, maybe this menu might even wait. That's actually a good comment. Maybe. Maybe we're going to end up calling it C special, and I'll probably be called C special commands. That's what I'm probably going to end up calling this internally in the game. C special commands. But that might not work actually. Well, let me think. Yeah, I like this idea. I think this will work good. What we want to do is the window won't appear, because otherwise you're going to have this window blinking in every time you hit spacebar on another key, when you might not even care if the window is going to appear at all. For example, you already know the keys eventually, right? So we want the window to appear eventually. So maybe it might wait for like, and we're not talking like seconds here. We're talking like literally, like it'll wait 250 milliseconds before appearing. So you hit spacebar, it's going to take the window 250 milliseconds to appear, but which is enough time for someone to press another letter key before it appears, but not enough time to be annoying for someone who wants to wait, maybe even less than 200, because you can press keys a lot faster than that. We might end up going even lower, like maybe 150 milliseconds. I'll figure out the timer through testing, but the idea is that I think we'll have a timer, which will wait before the window appears. So yeah, it's going to be a short timer, something like that. Because I don't think it would be cool if the window's always popping up if you know the commands already and you're purely using spacebar as a way to access these other commands and you don't need the menu. Which a lot of people eventually, once you play it for a while, you don't need the menu anymore. But even if you're a mouse user, then you do want the menu. We don't want them to be annoyed, so we got to have it appear pretty quickly. Still, it needs to be responsive. So you can click on it. But it takes you, a moment to move the mouse to where this window is going to appear anyway. So I don't think that's going to be a big deal. So originally, I was thinking that this window might be kind of a wider window instead of a long list. Partially because I was thinking there was going to be a lot of options in our window here. And if there are, it would be hard to make them all a list and include, for example, these descriptions at the bottom. But now seeing we have 11 of them, I'm now sort of considering maybe it could be a list instead. It'll require a minimum width, though, in order to get the descriptions to fit. but they'll also look better, I think, as a longer list than a wide thing. You know, because otherwise you have. All right, so I don't think we're going to need these dots, but we can always get them back later if we do. Otherwise, you end up with something like. Also, they're going to be different widths. Let me start typing in some other ones. Actually, we've got referabilities. And where's one that's toggle ruler overlay? It's like we're not gonna have a ruler overlay. It'll just be called ruler overlay. I'm gonna get rid of superfluous words here. Add log note. These aren't getting typed in any particular order. I was trying to see if there was going to be. I'm trying to now see if there's anything that's particularly long. Not really. Export map image. That one we're going to need the whole thing. So I would want that whole thing to be pretty descriptive. Export map. It could technically be called export map because we're going to have the description. So these can afford to be a little shorter if we need them to be, but I don't think we're going to need to worry about that. Might as well type another while we're at it here. Find item will be spacebar F. That will, I'm sure, be convenient for some people. Spacebar F. Okay. So yeah, one option is to make it horizontal, and the other is to make it vertical. I think in the end, this is starting to look like it. I think it'll look better if it's vertical. In which case, yeah, I think we'll go vertical for this. We'll look at the vertical one first anyway, because I don't think horizontal is going to look very good anymore. It's kind of a long. Well, no, it's okay actually. Having a title that long might even be helpful in this case because. Wait a minute. There we go. Yeah, it'll connect these automatically for us, but there's no line over there. All right. Well, one of the things REXPaint, you're talking about Cogmind. One of the things it can do is actually make these lines. You can draw lines that connect to each other like that. Not that we need to do that, but let's undo all that. I'm trying not to have auto-orienting lines here. But if we want, like, we can do that and then have it reorient these lines. Whoops, got the wrong color selected. Still have the wrong color selected. There we go. Reorient those lines, and then also all right, map comments is C, so we'll just go in order then. Yeah. It's starting to look like this might turn into a more typical looking menu. I was thinking it was going to look a lot different, but it might not. It's going to need maybe a little more flair. I'm going to have to compare it to a couple of other menus, like for example the robot hacking menu, and looks cool. We're going to want something different on this menu so it looks neat. All right, so we got map comments followed by find item, and we're going to start getting the order right here, I guess, since we're trying the verticals format. Go to cursor as a new one. Make that here. And then we have riff abilities. Actually, I'm going to copy. I was going to cut that, but no, we'll copy. Riff abilities, export map image. Go naked. We don't have naked yet. Reswap. We don't have reswap yet. Make another copy. We have stat dump, and we have tag item, and we have ruler overlay. Followed by add log note, and that's it. That's the extent of our list right here. You can see 11 lines. And we can go down the list here. F, and then we got G, I, M, B, and R, S. Whoops, press the wrong key there. We can keep doing. You can do a new line in REXPaint with Control Enter. Tag and then X and then Z. There we go. Ah, okay. No, that's interesting. Yeah. So DARPA Squid here says, actually, when I first heard this idea, I was sort of imagining rectangular buttons like the hibernate, shutdown, and the escape menu. Yeah, that's another approach. I think in this case, Um, One of the interesting things you can do with buttons like that, for example, is there's enough space to like draw something in there. Like for example, oh wait, I don't have them in this particular REXPaint version. I have uh, I have them in a different version because it uses different fonts. But like for example, the credits menu has an example of that. Oh, 5.8 has credits in it. Here it is. If you go to the credits menu in Cogmind, you have those little boxes that have actual different images in them, and you can do that kind of thing more easily if you have bigger buttons. Obviously, these are placeholder spaces for those. Um, and so what you were talking about here is these buttons, right? And that also includes that example because they're actually animated as well, and they have multiple states. When you click hibernate, you have to actually confirm, and a little confirm message appears over there so that you have to do it again. Here's the set I used for Polybot 7 because this was too big to show in Polybot 7, so I had to redesign it. Polybot 7 uses this orientation instead. I changed it. Uh, Actually, I should make sure. Yeah, you can actually see that. Okay, good. But yeah, that's an example. I think in this case, it's probably not necessary. The reason this was chosen for the game menu buttons is because they are really big decisions, and they also need a little more info to explain each of them. And they need two states so you can confirm them. And also they have the special animation on mouse over like this, but technically we're going to get that with these as well. With our these are going to have the usual, I would think, hover animation. But so far this doesn't look super compelling. But yeah, we're going to have to do something with it. That's an interesting idea. I don't think I want them to be quite that big though, because there's too many of them. Once you have that many buttons that are that big, especially, yeah, I don't think I'd probably want that for this. But it's mainly a way just to access them. We don't have to get all the information on the button itself. Let me retype these real quick. But interesting input there. Go to cursor. I'm not sure what this is going to look like in the end, really. This is going to be go naked. This one will be really good with an explanation, right? Because that doesn't make any sense to someone who doesn't know the mechanics yet. But this will be in a place where we can explain that mechanic. Stat dump will be able to tell you more. Tag item. All right. That's actual what? Right. Yeah, we'll make sure people actually know what going naked means, not whatever else they might be imagining. Um, Also, I don't know. It's also, I mean, this is obviously slang for that. What that is, it's not the actual description, which is kind of a weird thing to use as the description as the button name itself. I mean, I took these directly from here, but to be honest, we should be taking it from the manual, which is actually use the official terms for these things. Which might, I wonder if that'll make a difference. Let me see. Let me open the manual real quick. Definitely some cross referencing we can do here. Some bright white for you there. Let me see. Big old beta X10 manual. Beta 11 X10. The newest version of the manual. So here's the actual list of commands in the game itself. So did I write go naked in here? I did. Okay. Well, we're going to stick with that then. What else is in here? I got riff abilities. Riff abilities, Shift Alt I. Actually, yeah. So we're also going to need. Let me make a note of this. Don't want to forget. We're going to need this in the manual as well. Specifically, we won't want to just have riff abilities. We'd have something like Well, it wouldn't be over here. It would be on the other side probably. But something about using space, or actually, we'd be over here as a like a. Let me see here. Space bar. That would be space bar I. Followed by that. Only it won't be off centered like that. We'll be doing something like that. Actually, wait. This is not. This is actually a plus. I think it's a plus. Yeah, the way I'm doing these spacebar plus I. That would be how that is shown later, but we're not going to do that now. I know this is the actual manual, which is released with the game, with the beta 11 version of the game. So I update it as things are modified in the game, not before or after. All right, so yeah, here's the list here. So we have see here's a reswap in the game. Shift Alt R. We can find all these with the Shift Alt commands. Riff abilities, go naked, show all auto pairs and multi-swap auto pairs. We're gonna find out. We're gonna remove these two commands and find out who's using them, or I'll leave them for now because I don't think we want them in the actual special commands menu. They're not gonna really be something I want to keep around in the long term. But tag item with a manual name that enters tag mode automatically, so we don't need to worry about the 1-0 part. Because once you press T on this menu, what it'll do is it'll close the special commands menu and then open the tagging menu. Or it opens the tag message at the top, and then you can pick an inventory item to tag, and the rest of from there it's pretty obvious. Add note to log. Add log note. That's fine. Show orders. Yeah, here we go. Shift Alt under keyboard logic. There's a keyboard logic description to kind of help people understand why all the commands are what they are on the keyboard, and this was considered rare special commands. I'll update that later as well, telling people they can use spacebar. This be something to do. Okay, that's our manual. Whoa, TED Notepad fan. Oh, you use TED Notepad, Luigi? Yeah, I use TED Notepad. I love TED Notepad. It's awesome. It's really good for notes. I've been using it for years now. Needed a Windows Notepad replacement specifically for my notes. It's my to-do list. Is a note is a TED Notepad. That's I mean it's my standard text editor for just notes, but that includes my to-do list for Cogmind. Go bear. Go redacted. What did the P stand for in Shift Alt P? Ah, that's a good question, youngster. I think the original P was for remove all parts. It was for parts. I think that's where the P came from originally. Or purge might have been what it was. Parts or purge. I think it might have used to be we used to refer to it as purge all parts. That might have been it. It's either purge or parts. Obviously, in probably about 7, it is purge. But yeah, parts or purge, one of those two earlier on. And I know that one actually changed. I think it might have been another key at first, and it got changed to P. This is way a long time ago though, because this was like in the first year of Cogmind when that stuff was going on. But yeah, I think it was probably purge. But everybody was calling it go naked. Anyway, all right. So let's get back to our actual list here. So we do have technically the parse window is just as boring as a list, but this one's also not interactive. So it's a regular old box like this. Also, if you press spacebar and don't have another button, I think we're gonna need parse menu probably has one too. I didn't write it in here, but technically there's probably gonna be an X here. That appears in a wide font though. The actual X button for exiting is not a single space. It uses the map font. There's several fonts in Cogmind. It's not an X. Whoops. It's not to make it appear differently. It's not an X like this. It's actually an X. It's a double width X, which uses the map font. So I usually use a space here. Second space bar press to dismiss. Yeah, that would work. That was almost always work. In Cogmind, I always do it such that if you press the same key again, it as long as it's compatible, as long as it's possible, then it will close the same thing. Like for example, opening the status window is S, and if you just press S again, it closes the status window. But yeah, I'll make a note of that in case I forget. But I probably won't, because this is the kind of thing that when it comes time to close the window, I'll make a list of all the keys that can close it, and it'll come up in that list. There'll be escape, there'll be pressing this button, and yeah, it's not for manual. But yeah, I'm sure that'll come up later during implementation rather than now. It's also not something that ends up being documented in the window itself. It's just kind of a thing that you're allowed to do, and power users expect that kind of thing. It's not something that your average user will tend to do. Most average users, I think, end up pressing escape to close windows, which will be the standard way, and that'll work. And that's technically what I'm more used to using as well. But I do like to have the same key close a window, the same window it opened. It's always nice when it can do that, because your hand doesn't have to move, and you have to move in case you quickly realize that you didn't need it open. All right, so oh, whoops, top of the window's gone again. 1 second here. Let me move this around. Don't need to reference windows as badly anyway. I've left this over here because we have a full list to reference, but technically we've finished referencing it now. We've got all the options here. It's reswap. Yeah, that's not even this is an example of stuff that it's hard to explain in only a couple words or so. So you definitely want to have a longer description at the bottom. Now I'm just kind of looking at it and thinking about it. See, one thing I'm not going to like is, well, currently I don't like the fact that this title is too long, and there's a lot of empty space here. I don't like empty space. The space will feel less empty once we actually get a description inside. So I guess I should probably do that just to see what it looks like. Let's move this out of the way. Pull this down so we get some space to work with. Oops. But yeah, the reason for the width of the window right now is partially because there'll be text at the bottom, and also because you want to be able to fit the title, and the title also generally want it to be slightly, they're not centered. The titles in Cogmind's windows are generally not centered. There's a couple exceptions like these because they're special, but titles are either usually left oriented or right oriented, depending on the type of window and where it is. You can see all these windows on the right side of the right side of the GUI have right oriented titles in them. I think these are the only two exceptions, maybe. But they're either left or right. You can see the parse windows on the left, a bunch of other examples. The riff menus on the left. General windows that appear out here are on the left. But on the opposite side, you don't generally want it to fill the exact part of the title. It looks a little better if it's off center. But well, we'll see how much space we have. All right, yeah. This is not really going to be a lot of space to work with, which is part of the reason I was originally envisioning this as a wide window. Mainly because of the gray stuff we're going to need at the bottom. Because you don't want to have this divided into too many lines either. But I don't, which is, I guess, yeah, that is an argument then for trying to design this as a wide window anyway. And I put this down here specifically so that because we know we're going to maybe want some other text. The actual description for the feature up here, so when you hover over one of these items, this will change, this will not. I don't like the fact that they look identical. The one is extra information. We also have what is that? It's under filter 2, the search window down here. This is an example of information. Oh, you can't actually see that. Let me move this so you can actually see that. The search window here is an example of just extra information that's static. This doesn't change. But the stuff that does change is stuff like in our help menu that I showed earlier over down here. This is an example of stuff that does change. I don't really like the idea in an interface. You don't really want these things to look identical and one to be changing based on what you're doing and another one not to. But this is the standard color for extra information. So it's kind of complicated because we have both here. One of technically we could move one at least to the top side so that they're not together. But actually, yeah, this one could be moved to the top with different wording. This could technically come at the top of the window and have the explanation at the bottom, which is actually, that makes sense too. But I do think might have to redesign this as a wide window. Because normally with a window like this, the contents, you want it to be as wide as the widest contents. But if our widest contents are going to be a sentence based rather than word based, or phrase based, then you kind of have to go wide. All right, I guess we'll see how it looks. Let me get rid of some of this stuff. Don't need the parse window anymore. It was just kind of for basic reference. Move this down. I'm gonna move these out of the way. Oh, that's right. I forgot. Let's start using some other layers. I'm gonna add a second layer for us here. Throw this on the second little layer down there. You can't see it, but that's okay. Wait a minute. Oh, yeah, I didn't get rid of this yet. Get rid of, oh, it's because I'm on the second layer. Now I have to remember that we have 2 layers to work with. All right. This is wide version to be. This is our first attempt with a narrow version. Actually, I could just delete that because this has all the information we need in it already. All right, all right, so we have 11, currently have 11 options. So we could first design it to fit 6. So we can have at least 2 columns of information all the way down from to go naked. And then I don't know how wide this is going to be yet. And then we can take, starting from reswap, here we go. Well, it doesn't look as bad as I thought it might. This could work better. Only slightly annoying. Figure out what to do in a bit. And then then this is now as wide as, let me see, move this over to here, I think. One of the very useful features of REXPaint is right-clicking on something to copy all of its properties. So we can copy the color and glyph and all that of a specific place by just moving around. So it allows you to very quickly modify other parts of your image based on parts that already exist. And you can also highlight, you can also change whether or not you're going to copy or apply glyphs and various parts of the components and the colors, the foreground and background. It's pretty good for editing. This particular feature set, I mean, it's pretty direct and makes sense, but this is also, I saw this in several other editors before I made REXPaint. There's a couple of other editors that use the same approach. But none of those editors had all the features I wanted for an editor of my own. So I took that kind of concept and expanded it with all the stuff that I've been doing here in REXPaint. Okay, so this might work a little better. Let's go to layer 2. Actually, wait. Going to move that up a bit. Go to layer 2 and copy our information out again. All right, so let's do what I was thinking about earlier. Let's move all this down and see. Oh, that's right. Not worked with a multi-layer REXPaint file for a while, for a GUI anyway. I normally only work on one layer for a single type of project. Oh wait, I was going to move this, not copy it. Copy this guy down. I'm not going to worry about the wording of this yet. Again, I think the wording should be different. Oops, copy too much. I think the wording should be a little different for this, but I don't really care about that. What we're mainly worried about now is layout. Wording and details can come later. Generally, you want to focus on when you're designing an interface, you want to focus on as few variables as possible at a time. But I would assume I actually prefer if this would be one line right here at the top. One line would be ideal. So I'd probably try to find a way to reduce the wording so that's still clear enough, gets the point across, but it's only one line, so there's not too much of as much of a focus on that. I'm gonna assume I can do that and just get rid of it so we can do this for layout purposes and leave it at one line and see how this might look. That could end up looking okay. And then we need just random text down here. Not actually worried about what this text is, so we can just copy this stuff. So when you mouse over this, the description at the bottom will change, and it'll also highlight the button itself because this is a button, remember. And for keyboard players, because it's consistent throughout Cogmind, is that all the menus have the letter out next to them. The letter is how you access it. So keyboard players will also know that that's how you can get that. You can just press that key and it'll work. I wonder if that will go to the bottom. Not quite sure yet. All right. So yeah, that's getting closer. Obviously, this looks bad off to the right, specifically because this text shouldn't go to the right. You need a little bit of space to the edges. You don't want to have things going right up to the edges of your windows. Looks bad. Now that can be different left to right and bottom to top, but I'd like to be consistent. For example, like here, we'd probably prefer to have two spaces on the left and right. The bottom here is not as big of a deal. I think it could actually work fine if it goes all the way to the bottom of this. Top would not look good. If you look this, you don't want this text directly under the title. We need some space in there. Um, but you can also want a little consistency on the left and right here. You always got to have the consistency. So yeah, this on the right side needs an extra space. Increase it by 1, and now we have 2 spaces on the left and the right. Starting to look like a menu. One thing I don't like is this empty line. That bothers me. I have to add a command specifically to fill that line. Oh, bugs me a lot. All right. I mean, I imagine this looks a lot better if it's even. Also, it still doesn't look great, but it'll look better, I would think. Let me move some of this around and we can fool around with it. So you have a backup down here. So, for example, if we got rid of go naked, obviously you could remove a command too, but no, I'm not big on removing things. In design and development, I'm big on adding things. So I always like to add stuff when for example, in beta 11, I was going to remove the seismic analyzer. And I really liked the idea of a seismic analyzer and the fact that the tunneler used one, and it was early in the game. And so I came up with a whole new thing for the seismic analyzer to do, and then renamed it the seismic detector. And so we have a whole new type of sensor in the game. I'm going to write about that a bit on the blog in my next article about rebalancing Cogmind. But my whole plan to write another article kind of got postponed after I got sucked into a new content project I worked on all last week. Pretty cool new stuff coming to Cogmind, which I really shouldn't be doing considering how close we are to releasing beta 11, but I did it anyway. And all right, so back to what we're working on here. This is starting to look at least decent in terms of layout. I guess also I want to get rid of this. I need to remember this kind of like our little holding area for our, the fact that I forgot to put that in the wide version. We know there's going to be an X down here for closing the window. I did have that also in, no, that's the other window. Yeah, you can see the same distance here, the same distance and size for like, for example, the robot hacking, a little space there for the X. But yeah, see how with the, I mean, robot hacking is a little different. I like the way, I really like the robot hacking menu. We're not going to be able to animate this window in the same way that this one is animated. But I like the way, actually, yeah, and not all of these are some of these are test versions too. They're not all exact final versions. But I also, but I like the way it has a slightly different style that looks kind of neat. Um, but part of the reason it was made possible is due to the functionality, the fact that you can have different categories of hacks based on whether you need a coupler to do them, or if you use basic and riff and coupler required. Here's an example down here. The final version of this actually ended up looking a little different, um, but you get the idea here. Generally, have these lighter inner borders. Oops. All right, so I wonder if there's anything else interesting we can do with this window. I mean, the thing is, you don't want to have too many windows that look too different from one another, though. So that's an important thing. I mean, we can make it look all cool and frilly and do all kinds of neat stuff with it. And that's something that a lot of, I think, more beginner indie developers do, is just make all kinds of interesting looking stuff. But then it's not coherent. It's not consistent. You want that kind of design consistency. So you can't go too overboard with features. So anyway, also this was examining it without our empty line down here, which is really annoying. The thing is, it's going to expand. The other thing is, since we haven't, I've been waiting. I mentioned before, I've been waiting for years to actually implement this window, and we're finally at that point now. And part of the reason I wanted to wait because I didn't want to design it such that I'm going to need to change the design later depending on what's added to it. And it looks like, we still have a couple of unused keys, but we're on beta 11, and beta 11, the whole point was to really kind of finalize a lot of the design and balance. So and I've also promised this particular feature would come around now. So it's definitely time to do it, but we do have to also, while we're doing this, consider, um, how it will be is it expandable, and can it be expanded easily? And the answer to that will be yes. I mean, if it takes this form right here, right? We can easily just add stuff to the bottom. Having an empty line is kind of annoying. I guess it's not the end of the world, but also we can find, what you can do with an empty line is try to find some way to change the design such that the empty line becomes kind of a part of it. Like we can have some other kind of interior lines or layout. Um, I don't have any strong ideas on that. Let me think. Because there's no reason, these don't form any sort of category at all. So there's no reason for us to separate them from each other unless you come up with a reason. For example, the way it works on the help menu, and also not just, the options menu down here, all the other help windows. The options menu has nice separation. See, if we didn't have these categories and it was just a list of all these things, it would actually look worse, a lot worse. It would be harder to parse. I mean, it's already got a lot of info, so it can be kind of hard to parse, but it'd be even harder to parse. And it would be, it just wouldn't look as cool. This looks a lot cooler. Also, there was some nice space for animation here where you have these buttons, uh, kind of blipping in while these headers animate a line at the top of each one, which is, I think, turned out pretty well. So, the header fades in and the lines come across. So this is an example of how, if you can categorize stuff, you can, the design can look a lot better when it comes to like a text interface. But I don't think we have that option here, which is kind of makes this a little harder. that would be an argument, for example, or for making each of these options, because they're different from each other, right? Making them more individualistic through, for example, was mentioned in chat earlier with making them like these buttons here, where each one has kind of can have a little bit more character to it. Because if these are individual features, then giving them some of their own character makes some sense. For example, like log notes, and you have like a sample log note next to it, or the ruler overlay is a bunch of numbers. Because once you turn on the ruler overlay, it's a bunch of numbers, and also it could be colored as well, slightly colored. But you also don't want to go too crazy with that sort of thing. Hmm. But this is also not a menu that a lot of people are going to be looking at for a lot of time anyway. Eventually, people are going to. I mean, it's supposed to. It's purely functional thing, pretty much. Just checking my layers. Oops. Go back to layer. It's on layer 1. Good. All right. So yeah, here we have now a number of different attempts. This one here was just getting rid of that extra line, but the more I look at it, the less it bothers me. It certainly bothers me at the beginning, but I don't know if I want to change the standard button appearance too much with this, considering it's already. But it could be redesigned to just be something. Mm, I'm always tempted to do this, but I generally would only want to do it for special events and things like that, where we can get really interesting, like with the like for example the RPG like menu, which has all it has a completely a different style for the kind of way you interact with it and the way it appears. But again, there's also more features to tweak here and display. So it's a lot of fun actually designing this kind of thing. But there's also more room for the design, which more freedom there. Whereas in this case, I don't think I want to go a whole lot further than this. So we might end up just sticking with something as simple as this, I think. What I'll probably do is rest on it and come back to it later, because I normally don't design the UI for something and then implement it immediately. I'll spend some time waiting, seeing if I come up with any better ideas, and also after you let it rest for a day or two and then come back to look at it again, can perhaps see flaws in it or other ways to improve it, that kind of thing. But yeah, I think functionally this will have everything we need: the general introduction, access via buttons, exit, and a description for what each of these does when you hover over it. But so through that, you can kind of see the process that I use for designing the UI for some new feature from beginning to end. And I had no idea what it was going to look like at the beginning of today, but now looks like it'll probably be something like this. Unless anyone else has some input or things you want to try, that would probably be the end of this particular thing. But seeing as we're in REXPaint, we can also fool around and do some other things. Because there's definitely more stream time left. One thing I was going to show real quick, unzoomed REXPaint. This is this was the original Cogmind font before it got updated. And you can switch fonts in REXPaint via keyboard. We can also use there's a key up here to do it, and there's also an options menu. Wait a minute, there it is, options menu. You can switch to a different font here from the list that's loaded. I have the one we were using is Cogmind. There's also an XCOM font, which is actually, oh, that's right. The XCOM font is slightly different. Cogmind includes this font as well, I believe. Yeah, this is the XCOM font. Ah, brings back memories. Hey, Plexion, welcome to the stream. Yep, still just mainly finished up with the UI probably here, but and you can also look at what menus look like in different fonts because the whole feeling can change on the menu, right? Yeah, definitely some memories here. We got to do an XCOM stream eventually. It's on my list of things to do. I'm gonna get around to it. But here's another crazy font for you. Well, this was a what is this font? This was a test font. Oh, this is CP437. No wonder. This is the standard CP437, and here it is at a larger size. But that's a wide font. That's not actually what I use for the UI. I use it for I do use it for a map-based UI, which I could show you guys some of my other REXPaint versions. But this is the standard. What is virus? What is virus? Asks Plexion. It's nothing. Yeah, we talked about that earlier. The fact that it's nothing is just a feature that I was thinking of adding and wrote a tag for it in the GUI here, but I didn't actually use it. But I wanted to leave it there as a reminder. So that is actually the only feature in this GUI here, which that I left in here, which doesn't exist. I've actually shown it before, so I wasn't worried about that. But there was actually another UI feature I made for a mock-up of some stuff um, some years back about a kind of an idea I had for Cogmind that did not, and it will probably not, but who knows, get implemented. So I removed that one. I didn't want to discuss it, but um, oh, but the actual names of items here also were, or some of these don't exist in the game. I changed some recently, but like homing missile. This is literally like the first GUI thing I did for Cogmind, and so I was just kind of making up item names, names that could be. Um, the Omega Cannon was actually a thing, though. Oh, look, there's actually a new feature here that no one knows about. Look at that. Ah, did anyone notice that? No one noticed that. Everyone notices virus. No one notices a little X. No one noticed the little X. There's an X. I'm pointing out there's an X right here. There's an X. Oops. Actually, click on that. Oh, Flexion was going to ask about the X or the plus and the O. Luigi, you're supposed to know what the plus means. That's been in Cogmind for a very long time. If you read the manual, you'll know what the plus means. That is actually not something either you read the manual or you notice in game, but that's not new. That's actually really old. Fine, you'll read it one day. I can't believe you play this with Cogmind and haven't read the manual. Most people will at least skim the manual once you played that long because it'll really you can learn a lot of little details from the mechanics that'll help you out. Plus, refresh yourself on a lot of the other stuff. I know when you want to Luigi manual stream incoming, that would actually be pretty funny. Luigi me in the manual, reading the manual, repeatedly saying, "You can do that," or "This exists." This is going to be so helpful. But anyway, yeah, there is a new feature in Cogmind that's involving this X, but it has not been released yet. It's in the new version. But yeah, I needed to see how that would look in the UI, so I opened up this editor, threw in the UI thing here. All right, so let me see here. Let's open up a different version of RexPaint. See what we can not break. Let me go to my RexPaint versions. Here we go. Here I can show you my RexPaint versions. Boom. So here's my Cogmind development directory, and I have 7 different versions of RexPaint in my Cogmind directory. The one we're looking at here, actually, it's not 7; it's technically 6. The 7th one doesn't really count because I made it literally for this stream. This is a copy of my normal mockup stream because I like or my normal mockup version because I deleted a couple files from it. I will copy the file we just worked on back into here and delete this one after the stream. But what are the exciting new things that come out recently? Oh, it's too much Plexion. You can wait until next month when I do the big announcement. And what I'm going to do for beta 11 is not other than the original the normal change log, which is going to be too big for anyone to reasonably read unless you've got like an hour. I'm going to have a special overview at the beginning as well. I mean, I always have release notes which go into detail, but those are going to be long as well. What I'm also going to do is a big picture overview that'll kind of summarize the big points in beta 11 so that people can get a quicker idea of what they're of what's in store. But anyway, here's here's different versions. These are actually not Cogmind related. What is this one? Oh, different fonts. I was experimenting with different fonts and stuff, and also MRMO text fonts. These are not this version. So this is the version here for GUI stuff. This here is the version where I draw the props, meaning machines. This is where the machines are drawn and the prefabs are drawn. So all of the maps and prefabs come from here. This is where all of Cogmind's art comes from, and then also there's the wide mockups and the endings, because the endings actually use Cogmind's wide font. So this is my pre-designed version for my preset. Basically, the reason I have different copies is partially because they all have different fonts in them. They have different fonts and different settings based on what's more convenient for working with that type of interface feature. So let me see what this opens up as. Boom. Oh, this one's big. 1 second. I have to move this around. This isn't even a Zoom version. Endings. Close that. Close all that too. Mars. I don't think there's any. What else is in here? Oh, the evolution screen. This is where I was designing the evolution screen before. So we're now going beyond the special commands interface, which is probably going to at least start, like I said, with what I've got there now. We'll see if it evolves into anything a little different later. But so we're just going to look around at some other stuff here. This is what happened. This is the stuff that I was working on before Cogmind's first version released. Basically, yeah. As you evolve, you can do different slots, and I think Xylan noticed it recently, which was kind of interesting. Xylan thought it was new, and it's actually been in the game since the very first release. But when you evolve different types of slots, a different pattern emerges from the menu itself into your code out here. And if you evolve it, if you set the slot, it animates outward, and if you unset it, it animates inward. It doesn't look as good here. It looks kind of weird actually, but it's animated in game with different color and brightness, so it looks better in the game. But when you actually design something, the underlying files, it's not going to look the same way. So you have here the actual circuits, which are this here is actually the file that's included with the game, which the game cuts from this file and then animates it using particles. Replace this because animation looks awesome using the right side borders connect. Okay, whatever. I have no idea what that means, but it meant something to me a long time ago. This was me working on Intel. There's not a lot of map stuff though. There is the world map test because that also uses it. Map overlays. This was another design I was thinking about when I was doing map overlays and you're trying to aim at targets and how that would work. In the end, we ended up getting the targeting thing really only appears when you're going to fire an area of effect weapon. It will bracket in very light colors. Well, actually, not very dark. Sorry, but in very dark colors, it'll bracket out the area on two sides. But originally, the idea was it was going to have all kinds of crazy readouts and weird stuff happening while you were doing that, just to have for cool sci-fi effect. But I ended up not doing that. What else is there? Oh, this was for a blog post I did. What else do we have here? So this was working on the world map, all the different possibilities. I actually wrote a blog post about this whole thing, which you can read on my blog. But this here shows this is some of the original ideas for how the world map should look in order to fit the amount of data that we needed in it. And it kept evolving and evolving and evolving, and eventually became what it became. What is DSF? Oh, the DSF is that's the new thing, right? Okay. DSF is how the how the DSF factors in when you advance via DSF or visit one, because you can also visit waste, you can visit garrisons, and they have different indicators, right? DSF is also the maps between the maps, and you needed to make sure it had a way to show that, and it would be compatible with the other types of interface there. Otherwise, we'd have to come up with some other solution. But fortunately, it all worked out. Uh, that ended up working. DSFs on the map. Luigi says DSF good. I'm glad to see some people, seriously using DSFs. I imagine we're going to see a lot more feedback on DSFs and some interesting stuff going on there. In after the beta 11 releases in full. I think there's things about DSFs people don't even know yet. I got a Proton hover build from DSF. Yeah, Proto hover build. Yeah, you can get whole builds in there if you're lucky. I mean, obviously you can also get unlucky in there, but yeah, it's nice. Okay, let's. There's definitely reasons to go in sometimes, which I think is cool. And we don't want people always going in though, which I think it's worked out. People aren't always going in, right? All right, let me see what else. Yeah, I'm not gonna go open the other ones though. There's too many spoilers in those, I think. I'll save the art one for when we do an art stream. That's not necessarily too spoilery. I mean, it can be, but it doesn't have to be. We'll do an art stream someday with REXPaint. And let me see, large prop and prefabs. Maybe we'll do a prefab stream some other day. I can imagine doing a prefab stream for garrisons one day. That would be neat. Garrisons were actually going to be reworked in beta 11, not reworked, but it kind of expanded, and because garrisons were made, back in 2015, they were made a long time ago, and there's been so many new features added since then, and also they've been explored a lot. So I think it's about time for us to spice up garrisons a little bit more, or at least expand the options there. And that'll be something I wanted to do for beta 11, but we ran out of time already because there's now a deadline, and I've made a feature list of the stuff that is definitely has to make it in, and the stuff that can possibly make it in as long as I have time. And garrisons are not on that list for sure. It's already there's a lot of stuff to do. So Luigi's gonna do a manual stream after this. Says Luigi himself now. So anyway, that's yeah. So these are the other two versions of REXPaint I work with. Um, all right. Well, now I'm sitting here with time left on the stream and haven't decided what to do with it. I'm looking forward to actually playing some more Beta 11 soon. I didn't, because I was playing, I've been playing X8 for ages, and we've already got a bunch of new features and rebalancing done in the versions since. Now that I'm done with the last run, we'll be able to do that. Test out the loading time mod, says Luigi. I was gonna do that after the stream. I'll do it later. I know you sent me a message about that. Luigi has a loading time mod for Cogmind, but I'll test that out later. What else do you want to do design wise? I'm interested. I hope it does have some nice effects. What I need to do for Cogmind is once again profile the startup, because I'm not sure if they've gotten out of sync in terms of the amount of time they need. You have particles, sound effects, and other data. All of them all of them use different threads to load during the startup sequence, and they used to be pretty similar in the amount of time each of them took. But in the time since, I might have added a lot more sound effects, and I'm not sure if they might be out of sync now, and sound might be taking more than the others, which means there's a couple options there. One option is obviously if you have a good speed up on the libvorbis DLL, that would be kind of a nice thing to rebuild that and get that newer version in the game. Perhaps that's a consideration. The other consideration is split out the sound into two threads. For example, the ambient audio versus all the other audio. Split those into two separate threads if necessary. And that would automatically speed it up for most people too, because you get a little bit more multi-threading going, because it's kind of the whole reason Cogmind startup has gotten a lot faster than it used to be. Several years ago, was because it's multi-threaded, but we can add another thread if necessary. Oh, Luigi says one friend got 8 seconds down to 6 seconds. That's not a golden billet. Yeah, I would think so. I mean, my startup doesn't really take 8 seconds either, so it also depends on the kind of computer. But yeah, I'll test it out after the stream. Okay. So I mean, we're trying to stay on topic here as well. I was trying to mainly do RexPaint UI stuff. So is there anything else that we want to do for this? Because um, yeah, the more I look at this, the more I'm pretty satisfied with implementing it with the way it looks here. I think that'll probably be it'll get the job done. And yeah, I do like the horizontal better now though. Oh, one other thing I just noticed now after resting on it and coming back is the width difference here. What you don't usually want is to have a different width. Um, I haven't actually considered that yet. We have two columns here and they're different widths each, which kind of sucks. Rex seems neat. Does it export to a portable format? RexPaint exports to a billion formats. It's got a ton of them, many formats. You can read the manual. It lists all of them. And I've added more and more over time because people request different export formats. But yeah, the default export format is just PNG because it's made for just creating images. But yeah, there's all kinds of others. I mean, it exports to text, BB code, like 3 or 4 formats you probably never even heard of. XML, and it also has I think it is CSV, or maybe I'm not sure what else it has. It's got a lot of formats. Personally, I've only ever used the text and BB code, and I've also used obviously I normally use the image export, but it's got other stuff too. You can't see those from in here. I was talking about earlier about the fact that RexPoint 2.0 will have a more accessible, more discoverable feature set, whereas here you have one export key, and you have to go into the manual to find out how to export to other formats. Like the actual exporting to text is Control T. You can't. Yeah, you can see it out there. Exported images GUI special.txt. And so if we open, where's this folder here? Images. Here we go. Wait. There it is. Boom. Here's the directory. Here's the directory of RexPaint. Here is storing all of its images, and you can see now it exported special txt. This is going to look crazy though, I'm sure, right? Oh no, it actually doesn't look crazy. Look at that. Look at that. Text export. Because it uses Unicode now. It doesn't use. This is actually a CP437 Unicode export, which works. Check it out, huh? Yes, WinRAR moment. um, Yeah, that's the text export. Text export used to not look this good because it was literally only using ASCII export, but now it uses UTF-8 actually is I think what I settled on there. You can actually also set it to use different export codes and stuff like that. There's a lot of options, but yeah, it's pretty neat to get. This is a Cogmind interface in text form, right? It's kind of cool. But yeah, you can do this with the images too, of course. This is the text export. You can also export, like I said, a BB code, which would even do color, I believe. And you can put that on like forums. That was one of the reasons I added that. Was back then I was visiting a lot more forums more often. And not that I actually needed it, but it was kind of something fun to work with at the time. But yeah, there's a bunch of other export formats. They're all done via hotkeys though. What else is there? I don't actually remember them all because I don't use them. But yeah, I did remember Control T, that's for sure. But yeah, there's also the more portable, for example, like just an XML format, which lists all the colors and data. Obviously, it's really bloated compared to the other stuff because like RexPaint itself uses a very encrypted, very tight uh, format for all the data. The text format, text loses color though. It doesn't have any foreground or background color. When we open this, you can't. Obviously, there's not going to be color in just text format. But the other formats that you can export to do retain the color information. Anyway, yeah, that's kind of cool to look at. I hadn't done that before. Not since I really added the Unicode feature. I mean, I did some tests with it to make sure it works, but I didn't actually do it with Cogmind stuff, which is kind of neat. But yeah, here's also where like the PNG will go. So like for example, if we export to special PNG, it's now appeared here, and we can open this, And then you have the image of the actual image that's in there. So that gives you your terminal data. Well, the one thing REXPaint doesn't do yet, because it's kind of complicated, is import from other formats. It only imports from its own format. Importing from other formats is a lot more complicated, mainly because then it doesn't, should it be in the browsing menu or not. There is a way to import images. There is a way to import them using certain other methods. You have to actually do it through the command line interface though, and it can import. It can try to import images from other roguelikes and kind of interpret what's in them, which is kind of interesting. But it doesn't work entirely for the characters. It doesn't work for characters very well because it doesn't actually use OCR. Anyway, so that's more about REXPaint. What else do we want to look at? Any other questions from chat? That is REXPaint. I'll move that back over there. What other stuff do you want to look at here? Oh, so actually what I was talking about a second ago, I don't like the fact that these columns are, it's actually not a good idea to really have two columns which aren't the same width. These technically need to be the same width. All right, so getting rid of that was kind of pointless. So I'm actually going to take layer 2 and get rid of this thing. And then I'm also going to zoom back in since we're working in REXPaint again. Let's work on this for a bit here. Take this, copy, push it down. So ideally, these need to have the same width. So our current width on these is, let me see, what are we going to measure by? Well, it's going to depend on almost how much space we want between the columns. 3 is probably good. I think it makes sense to have, you don't want only 2. You don't want equivalent spacing between absolutely everything because it gets really boring. So we already have a width of 2 between the spaces on the left and the right, and so we don't really want a width of 2 in the middle here. I think a slightly wider width of 3 is probably going to work better, and we have that at 2. Sorry, our max width here is 22. So, and our max width here is 19. So we need to add 3 more spaces to the width of this window. Let's do, wait, where are we here? Go 1, 2, 3. Wait, is that 3? That was only 2. Always finding more stuff to do here. Actually, wait a minute. Yeah, well, yeah, okay. That makes sense. And so the total width now from the end of this to the beginning is 24. 24. Okay, yeah, that's correct. All right, so technically, this is how wide the window should be. I don't like the fact that we're going to have to get rid of that space. We don't want things to be right up next to the end, but I do want, we might as well let the text go here. Even though technically, once we write the actual text in here and it's changing, there might be more space left at the end. That's not going to, that might happen. God forbid anyone read this lorem ipsum text here. Where does the golden ratio fit into this UI design? Everywhere. 3 to 2 is an approximation. Yes, there we go. There we go. That's not quite 3 to 2, but all right. So yeah, this is better. It also gives us a little more room to work with this here because I haven't written this text yet. But my guess is it's going to be hard to fit into too short of a line. Well, it's not going to be too hard. But anyway, I want this to ideally fit, more or less fill this line, but not go into a second line. So that it kind of, the information can also be part of the aesthetic. It helps build it. When you have a text interface, that's what you're dealing with. The text is your aesthetic, which is part of why, for example, fonts are really important in a roguelike game. Your choice of fonts. That's why I did a whole series of blog articles on that, designing fonts, and I also think about that stuff a lot. So anyway, yeah, this will give it a little extra room for this first line, but yeah, I'll have to consider the length of that. We're kind of trying to aim for a good length that'll end around here. That'll be kind of my goal for that. But this is technically a little better to have the width of each column match. Even if this one doesn't fill its column, that's fine. Obviously, there's the other option. We have here, these are in alphabetical order, going down in the columns. The other option, which some people, some things do, is have your alphabetical order go horizontally, A, B, C, D, that kind of thing. Personally, I think that's kind of terrible because if it's an order, then you want the things that are closer to each other to also be closer to get together in the interface. So you kind of want, the C and F are the closest letters. You don't want them horizontal way across from each other where they've got this big void in the middle. Kind of want them to be able to go straight down, a lot closer. It's more easier to see the progression there. Obviously, in this case, it makes a little less sense because it's a bit sparse due to all the commands that we're not including in this menu, especially because, just VI commands are already missing a big chunk. But then there's a bunch of others too. So we only ended up with 11 out of 26 possible things that could have been in this menu. I wasn't even sure how big this menu would be when we started working on it. But yeah, that's another consideration when looking at letters and alphabet-based menus. So yeah, in the end, it'll just be spacebar, open this, and click on or press letter. Should be, yeah, should turn out okay. I like this actually looks a little, this actually, interestingly, I think this space down here already looks better to me because this whole thing got wider than down here. This looked lopsided, and I wasn't quite sure why. This down here, the fact that it was missing one felt really weird to me. And yeah, so see, we left it and we did some other interface stuff and playing around with REXPaint, and I came back to it and I noticed that the fact that this column just wasn't as wide. So it's really good to revisit things um, after, and I'm still going to revisit this again later as well, but I think it looks a lot better now. This one up here clearly looks better than the one down here due to the fact that the columns are now the same width. Even though this right column doesn't take up the actual same amount of space as the left column, it still owns that space, just indirectly because the left one here kind of, when you're looking at it, you've got like this invisible rectangle of this size. And so you immediately have this nice same size rectangle right here. You can kind of, your brain kind of envisions that being there. Or, some people might notice this, some people might not. It's the kind of detail that I tend to notice when I'm looking at stuff. Or at least when I'm looking at it from the outside, which is why it's nice again to step away from something and back to it, because then you're more on the outside. When we were building it earlier, I was on the inside thinking about the little details and wasn't really looking at the big picture in the same way. But when you came back, it really stood out, and it makes this empty line actually look not be much of an issue anymore, which is kind of an interesting thing that it doesn't bother me as much in this window compared to this one down here. It felt really weird. I like that. So yeah, interesting observation there. And yeah, I obviously there's the fact that this so we got rid of the vertical option because, and for anyone who wasn't in the stream earlier, I know we got a number of new people had shown up. That we started with a vertical version of the special commands menu, just as a list because it kind of makes sense. This makes sense as a list, and we don't need a lot of extra info next to each one. But it's nice to have lists like alphabetical lists that go straight down, right, rather than splitting them if you can. But the fact that we need descriptions down here, it made a lot of sense to switch it to a horizontal window. So yeah, this one's starting to grow on me now. I'm liking that. It'd be nice to see this implemented by the end of the week. This menu will probably take not too long. It'll probably just take about less than a day to implement. Yeah, I can't see any roadblocks to that. It's not doing anything new or interesting in terms of interface wise. It's pretty standard stuff. So yeah, it should take less than a day, which would be really nice because this is one of the major features which is left for beta 11, but I still got a lot of other minor stuff on my to-do list. All right. Looking forward to this menu. I'm going to use it often, says Luigi. Good. Good. I know. Yeah. It's going to be good. It's going to be able to teach people. It's going to be useful. You won't have to use the Shift Alt keys anymore or remember what they are. I mean, I'll probably even use it sometimes. Um, yeah, I can imagine I will. You can kind of dump these from your memory too, if you want to. There's just so many commands and key combos in Cogmind that it's nice if you can dump some and or keep it simpler, right? Rather, even also just getting rid of Shift Alt's kind of nice. Just spacebar and a letter. The modifier struggle is real. Yeah, I know exactly. I was talking about earlier in the stream. I didn't know if actually you were here, Luigi. Yeah, about the fact that especially on non-Windows systems, the modifiers can be more problematic, and especially on Linux too, or under Wine as well. That can be a problem. So yeah, getting rid of modifier keys is always nice. Um, cool. All right. So yeah, now we're done with the second pass on our special commands window. I might change the title. I don't know. Special commands. Uh, I don't know if we have any other two-word titles in Cogmind on window titles. I think all window titles are one word right now, which would be a nice, if it's true, then it might be nice to keep that consistent. But special commands, first of all, special commands is, well, it's very descriptive of what this is, and it's only two words. Also, this is a relatively wide box, so maybe it makes sense to allow it. I'm gonna get rid of this one. I'm gonna make a copy of this. I think two might be okay. The other option is to consider how it looks when it's centered. One of the funny things actually is one of the reasons maybe that it feels also better when menu or window titles aren't centered is that Cogmind does always use the slashes, which are either left or right. There's no like vertical bars used for menu titles. That way, this is the menu style, right? So it tends to look better when the slashes can be oriented towards one side or another. Here you have a right oriented title oriented in slashes to the right, and here you have them oriented to the left. Here's the exceptions with very short title names, which orient them to the right. But yeah, in the center here, I don't think it looks as good actually. I like it on the left, definitely. Left looks better. Leave that there. All right, here we go. Okay. Mint Yogi, welcome. Maybe because I'm currently web dev, the different column widths look better to me. Browsers rendering tabular data. Keep the padding and margins consistent. That makes me question the idea that having columns the same width is inherently better. Luigi says, I don't know as a web dev. I think Kids is right. I do React stuff with TypeScript. This is what the stack of flexboxes with equal width would turn into. Okay, so got some web devs. Yeah, coming at this from a web dev perspective. That's yeah. I totally I get that. I understand that for sure. I can see that as to me, for example, yeah, if you're working with tabular data, and I'm not a web dev myself technically. Maybe I'm not a professional web dev, but I do a lot of developing my own websites and things. And I've working with tables and a lot of tabular data. In that case, you know, different column widths is makes a lot of sense, I think. But it's also because each column represents something different usually. You have your rows are going to be, you'll have all the rows are the same type of object, and each of your columns is a different type of object. But in this case, we also have in this case, all of our columns and rows are all something different. They all represent something different, so they're all individual buttons. Like they're kind of each one represents the exact same thing in terms of functionality and meaning, right? So in that sense, each one should kind of have the same level of importance in terms of spacing. Perhaps that's kind of what I'm thinking about. I mean, obviously, I was also talking about the aesthetic just now, but I'm trying to think of functionally why that would make sense here compared to having a table with data. With a table with data, with no questions asked, I like the different. You definitely want your adjustable table widths and widths that represent, reflect the widest thing in your column. That I think makes a lot of sense. But maybe maybe that's kind of what I'm thinking about here too. Because I mean, when you look at this menu, here's the other example down here. You've got, all these take up more space, even though their equivalent importance to this. So I don't know if it's a meaning thing or an aesthetic thing, but yeah, I'm still liking the one up here. That looks better. Interesting take though. I can see that. It's an interesting thing to think about. Hmm. Uh-huh. All right. Yeah. Mint Yogi says they get the distinction between this and tabular data. Rows represent one thing with attributes in the rows. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thanks for entertaining my take. Yeah, it's interesting to think about. Thanks for bringing it up. Yeah, it was interesting to consider. Definitely noticed the difference there. I see what you mean. Also, there's the fact that with the little extra, we also gain some benefits here with the extra width. Um, with a tiny few extra characters here, we also get more space so that this doesn't have to be as long. Also, one thing is that I didn't consider yet. Um, the height of this. All right, so this window is going to be static in size, and the height of this is going to have to be as tall as the tallest possible explanation from these things. So we're going to have to try to control the amount of text, hopefully descriptions that these have, because you don't want one that's like one line, another one that's like 5 lines, because then you have a ton of empty space when you're looking at that one. It doesn't look as good. So if they're all going to be about, I'm guessing that they're all going to end up being anywhere from 1 to 3 lines, which might not be too bad. Like for example, we've got a 3 line setup here that goes down to the bottom. It'll fill. 1 line isn't too bad. It could be excessive if we start getting like 4 and 5 lines with a ton of stuff. So I'll have to be paying attention to the length of the description. But yeah, when I go in to actually implement this, the height will be static, and we'll have to consider the amount of room there, and that will affect how it's written as well, which is probably fine. I mean, that's you can, like I was talking about with this first line up here, you can adjust the wording based on how much room you have. It's usually possible to do that. I have a lot of experience doing that for change logs, because with Cogmind's change log actually, um, I try to keep. I have a set width for my change log, and I have to keep, no matter how complicated the thing to describe, I have to keep the change log within that width. So I rewrite sentences or rewrite entries for the change log until they can fit, or try to keep them as short as possible to begin with. But sometimes you have some really complex stuff, and but you still want to keep it in one line. So it forces you to rewrite it and simplify it as much as it's still understandable, but also fits within that one line. Um, and for that, I'm referring to the public changelog, not my internal changelogs. Although technically, my internal changelogs also tend to be within that one line limit, but I'm not super strict on that because I mean it's the internal changelog anyway. So I'll go into multiple lines if I have to, or if it'll be really helpful for reference in the future. But the public changelogs, I like to keep it so that for one reason, so the formatting can remain consistent and it's a little easier to read. And also because if you can keep things short and sweet and still mean the same thing and people will get the same information out of it, then that's always a better approach. I'm not trying to write a novel and not trying to make people read endlessly. So anyway, all right. So all right. So we revisited that. That's interesting, and thanks for bringing that up. This interesting discussion. Hmm. So yeah, that's it for the second pass. I guess that's probably going to be about it then. Let me think. What am I going to do next? Probably try to do an actual Cogmind run next week for our stream, because yeah, I'm going to need to play some of the new beta 11 releases. I haven't done that. Like I said, I was on X8, and there's been a lot of changes since then, and I've been already adjusting things based on what I've seen happening with other players, and there's been a few more adjustments, but there's a lot that I want to experience on my own and see how it's playing. And yeah, it's looking pretty good though. I'm liking. Ah, thank you, Welper. Wishlisted and ban on payday. Awesome. Well, next month we're gonna get a massive new version. It's gigantic. It's gonna be huge. It's gonna add a ton of stuff, change a ton of stuff actually too. Not most of the fundamentals, but it'll be better overall. But not to discourage you from getting it before that. It's always still good to learn all the basic stuff. And take a little while to get into. There's a lot of layers, but yeah, big version I'm working on is today is the 22nd. It's going to come out. It's going to come out in a few weeks. Yeah, we're only about 3 weeks out, which is not a lot of time. Got a lot to do. Yeah, going full steam ahead on this though. Working really fast. Most of this rest, once I finish this UI, the rest of the stuff should be. It's just a whole lot of smaller things, pretty much from here on out. I've been working on a lot of really big things for the past, well, year really, but also even for the past several weeks, been doing a lot of bigger stuff that takes a lot of time for. It'll be interesting to see what people think of, but yeah, I'm gonna get a new pre-release build out here relatively soon too. I think the next pre-release build will be basically have this in it and the stuff I've been working on recently, and that'll be the last one before the final beta 11 build probably, because yeah, there's no time for another one. So this will be the last non-beta 11 pre-release build. Where the final release build, pre-release build, will just be looking to make sure there's nothing super broken. What we're gonna have is beta 11 will come out, and I'm almost certainly going to end up doing another 11.1 release in a short time after that, if necessary. But then I also want to try to do something for April, as people are expecting. So I need to leave time for doing that too, and it might take a little while. So the release will come out, and there should be enough time left to do something with that. Hopefully, it's not too messed up. But to be honest, I think Beta 11 should go pretty smoothly, if only because we've been testing it all along the way, and there's a lot of Beta 11 issues have been fixed just as they come up. So it shouldn't be too bad. It should be overall. It's going to be even more. Should be more stable too than Beta 10. Beta 10 is plenty stable, but I mean, I'm even we're fixing all the old stuff from Beta 10, which really hasn't been a ton of stuff considering that Beta 10 has been out for over a year, and we've had plenty of time for people to report bugs and see what crashes and if there's anything wrong. And there's just been some really rare occasional stuff, which has all been fixed. So, all right then. Well, unless there's any questions from chat or other stuff you want to look at, that'll be the stream for today. And well, we didn't see that. Close some other windows here. I'll leave these uncommented there, or separate comments. Nice little alternative coloring scheme there to see the difference. The rest of these, that's right. I'll just ignore them for now, actually. All right. So not seeing anything from chat, so that will be it. Thank you all for showing up. I will probably be doing a Cogmind X10 run next week, or even X11. I doubt I'll get it out by then, but I don't know. We'll see. It's going to depend on how quickly I implement the special commands window on top of other changes I really want to have in the release that comes out as the last non-beta 11 pre-release for people to play around with. But most of what I wanted in there was done. There's just some other, probably some extended game cheese related stuff or whatever, but I don't know. We'll see. I haven't gone down the list thinking about that yet. What I've mainly made a big list of is the stuff for beta 11 itself, which has a final feature list now set. So we'll see about that. So anyway, until next time, and I will see you in the Discord. The link is in the chat if you want to stop by and haven't been there before. Got a lot of people playing not just Cogmind, but all kinds of roguelikes, and a whole bunch of roguelike developers hang out there too. So maybe see you around.